How y'all doing this morning? All right, okay. Let's see. Bring our slides up here.
Your video is playing.
Oh, okay, hold on a second. Let's go back one. Okay. Okay, well, look, this is probably one of the most exciting panels that I've been looking personally forward to this week, Digital Twins in the Industrial Metaverse. And today we have a fantastic panel. We have Dan McConnell here, who's the Chief Technologist from Booz Allen Hamilton, and also co-chair of the VRARA Industrial Metaverse and Digital Twins Committee. We're going to talk about that a little bit more today. We have Dr. Paul Cummings, who's the Chief Architect for Unity Government and Aerospace, and also one of the co-chairs of the VRARA Digital Twins Committee, and Kevin O'Donovan, founder and evangelist. His name of his company is A Bit of This and That. Yes, that's the name. Actually, a very good name. And he's also co-chair of the VRARA Industrial Metaverse and Digital Twins Committee. And my name's John Cunningham, and I have the honor today of being the moderator for this panel. So what we want to talk about today is digital twins in the industrial metaverse. You know, we keep hearing about digital twins, the industrial metaverse. How does it all come together, and what are some of the technologies that are enabling it and some of the use cases? So what we thought we would do before we get started with the questions, we want to share an example that we all thought was a great example of a digital twin.
Open Digital Platform, a district management system that enables efficient management of multiple estates across Singapore. The platform converts and displays sensor, geospatial, and building data on an integrated 3D platform. In the country overview, enable map overlays of weather data, sensor data, and transport, aircraft, and maritime vessel data. Capture open data from government agencies and display useful data geographically. Receive automated notifications according to preset limits. Sent via system alerts or an instant messaging platform. Estate managers can easily navigate across the various estates highlighted. The Estate Command and Control interface provides estate managers real-time updates on estate operations, such as power and water consumption and electricity loads. In the building overview, visualize geographical positions of systems and assets across various building levels and zones in real time. Enable responsive maintenance with the help of real-time incident reports from the digital twin. Assign tasks to the nearest available staff to carry out maintenance and attend to incidents. The JTC Summit, a 32-story, 450,000 square foot building constructed in 2000. Building floor plans are painstakingly converted from CAD to BIM and meticulously textured in 3D to create a lifelike digital replica of the building. The Open Digital Platform allows for seamless plug-and-play integration with existing building systems. Monitor and manage systems such as district cooling and smart grid, car parks, human flow monitoring, fleet management, and urban logistics. Measure efficiency and load distribution with the help of charts and data analytics, allowing for more efficient resource allocation and management. automate interactions between systems and repetitive processes such as mail and package deliveries. Model real-world conditions within the platform. Simulate events over the last 24 hours using real-world historical data in playback mode. Simulate emergency situations to plan emergency response procedures and train staff to respond quickly in a real event.
So as far as digital twins go, that is absolutely an amazing example. This is a real example. It's working. It's operational. You know, Singapore is a country that's known for innovation, and we're very proud that the Jurong Town Corporation chose to partner with Unity to develop this digital twin. So what I'd like to do here real quick before we jump into the questions is I'd like to ask each of you to briefly introduce yourself and your role and sort of your role in the context of digital twins in the industrial metaverse. Paul?
Sure. So my name is Paul Cummings. I am the Chief Architect of Unity Government and Aerospace. My background has really been in looking at data and visualization and how we are creating solutions that are combining them. This is a really, really exciting time to be looking at digital twins and how that is emerging into what we're seeing as the metaverse. And thank you for having me here.
Yep, thanks, Paul. Dan?
Yeah, thanks, John. Hi, I'm Dan McConnell. I'm a Chief Technologist at Booz Allen Hamilton. And in my role at Booz Allen, I support the Chief Technology Office. It's a newly formed office for Booz Allen. And within that, we spend a lot of time doing R&D around digital twins, but in the broader ecosystem to include IoT, 5G, and a lot of enabling technologies that kind of go together with digital twins and really what our clients are looking for.
So for those who aren't familiar with Booz Allen Hamilton, can you talk a little bit about the company?
Sure. Booz Allen Hamilton, over 100-year-old management consulting company, a lengthy history, but in more recent times we've focused specifically in the federal government. So I spent a lot of time focused in the federal space and specifically the defense space personally.
Yep. So thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you.
And Kevin?
Good morning. I think it's still morning, yes. Kevin O'Donovan, Irish guy, live in France. My background is, I've always been in enterprise IT, new technology sales. I was with Compaq, HP. I used to head up Intel's sales into the energy sector for about 10 years. I've been independent consultant for the last, 5 years. Looking at how new technologies, particularly in the energy industry, can be used and creating that art of the possible, but trying to bring it back down to reality to where a particular company are. You know, oh, we want to go to the metaverse, and it's like, well, okay, where are you starting from? For folks that know me, I do a lot of work with Siemens. Working with Siemens in the past 12 months, they have a big thing around the industrial metaverse announced in June. So lots of cool things going on in industry and energy.
So we got a nice broad representation of different industries here. So let's start with the first question. Why are digital twins so popular now? I mean, digital twins have been around for 20, 30 years. Why now are digital twins so popular? Who wants to take that first? Go.
Oh, sure, I'll take it, John. Exactly right. They've been around for a while, and especially, you know, even from where I sit in the government space, digital engineering, manufacturing, digital twins play a huge role in the defense industrial sector. I think what's making them so popular right now is not looking at digital twins for the sake of the digital twin itself and looking at the broader ecosystem and how it can serve as a platform when you're adding IoT, sensors, different networks as we move to 5G. So I think that coupled with the fact that low-code, no-code solutions and applications that are being built on top of those digital platforms is really democratizing the ability for these large enterprises to push down capability development beyond just a small tech working group within a firm.
Right, so it used to be, it was really only the engineers that got access to the data and understood how to handle it.
Exactly.
Paul?
So sometimes what you'll hear is me talk from the perspective of computational social science. So what we do is we look at what's called convergence and emergence. So what we're seeing is a convergence of a lot of technologies that have emerged and grown and sort of to a level of maturity at the same time. So what we're looking at is new AI technologies, 5G edge compute systems, new AR, VR solutions, different approaches to AI that we're looking at, computer vision, reinforcement learning. So that's the convergence part of it. And the emergence part of it is really, now what we're seeing is these pockets of people that are developing technologies that are beginning to emerge as being standards and approaches that we can use for digital twin and ultimately metaverse technologies.
Okay, Kevin?
So to Dan's point, digital twins and the technology has been around for years, but I suppose we didn't call them digital twins. And we call them, you know, it was a CAD model, or it was a SCADA system, or it was a whatever. So what I've seen in the energy industry over the past couple of years is that digital twins are popular because people are getting value from them. But I suppose what I've seen in the energy industry is that an energy company might have multiple digital twins. So let's say there's a transmission company, the big power lines. They'll have a model of how they built the power plants and whatever, so that's a digital twin. They might have done LiDAR scans, low Earth orbit satellites, built up point clouds, photogrammetry, blah. That's a digital twin. They've probably got IoT centers. Like years ago in Intel, we used to call that the embedded business. Then it became IoT. And so they're getting all this real-time data. That's another digital twin. And then they're probably doing some snapshot of all that data, and they're doing simulation, which I think is the key thing. I can do the what if in a simulated environment to see, well, what happens if this breaks, or what happens if this thing. And what's happening is that you have multiple different twins. I think one of the features we have right now is that they're in multiple different silos.
Right.
They don't talk to each other. Now, the model we just showed, they talk to each other. And I think, but digital twins right now are cool. And the other thing I would say, I've been at a lot of big energy events the past 12 months. Years ago, people were talking about, I've got a digital twin. You don't find digital twin on the marketing banners anymore. They're talking about the business value. It just happens to be driven by a digital twin. That make sense?
Yep, absolutely. So another thing I'd like to add is that the cost of the technology that lets you sit on top of all those digital twins and bring it together in a common environment, a gaming engine, right? The ability to visualize that in a way that normal people can access the data, I think that's transformational.
This is where we're headed, and whether we call that the metaverse or we call it the industrial something or the whatever, it's the next stage of digitalization.
You led us into question number 2. What's the difference between the metaverse and digital twins? Just real simple. What do you guys see as a difference? Go ahead.
So I suppose I don't know what the metaverse will turn out to be, and during the week here we had multiple definitions, whatever. But I think there's a couple of things where I come from where whatever the metaverse ends up to be, it's some sort of a 3D spatial representation of a virtual world or the real world and a virtual world or whatever. It's going to be persistent, so that if I leave it, I go back, things have changed. It's going to be immersive, and immersive is a scale, right? It's 2D, 3D model or VR headset and Tesla suit and whatever. There's probably some economy in there, and I can collaborate. I'm not there on my own. So if you're going to take those characteristics and say, well, where do I take all these pillars of these digital twins, and how do I get to the one digital twin, whatever you want to call it, where I can do all of, when I get all those characteristics, to me, that's the foundation of whatever the metaverse will be, is digital twins, and that digital twins being overlaid onto one digital twin that's the version of the truth. Like the big thing I see with VR right now, every energy company is doing VR training, every one of them, or AR training, but they're building siloed apps at a snapshot in time.
Right.
What they want to try and get to is that if I change the design or the physical layout, the VR training module almost gets updated overnight.
Right.
That to me is whatever we call the metaverse in the future.
Okay. Dan?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with Kevin, and I think he echoed a lot of I thought what Dave Rhodes said on the first day, defining the metaverse and digital twins was really great. And so I think the way I kind of parse the two in my mind is, rather than look at the differences, like how are they integrated, and how do they support each other? So if this, the excitement around digital twins that we were just talking about serves to be the foundation or building blocks for the metaverse, I think that it'll become a platform for these additional technologies, whether it's embedded IoT, AI, it'll serve as the building blocks for the metaverse.
Okay. Paul?
So a couple of weeks ago, I was asked to join a standards committee to think about what the metaverse AR, VR is going to look like, primarily from a training perspective, and we sat around, had some steak and talked about it, and people were kind of talking about what's possible. And what I said to them is what I would say to the community, which is so the metaverse, in my perspective, is a very social fabric type of infrastructure. So it's going to have a digital synthetic part of it, but it's going to be very socially focused. And with that, you're going to have pockets of what we would consider to be the future of the metaverse. And what I added to that was, don't feel like we need to constrain that right away. What we need to do is we need to spend some time to let it germinate, to let it grow, measure it, evaluate what it is, and then begin to use those conversions towards developing structures and standards. So whereas you look at something like digital twins tend to be more discrete. They may be complex, they may be autonomous, they may use multiple layers, but in many ways they are feeding what I see as the future of the metaverse. But ultimately that metaverse, my boss's boss brought up the idea of it being primarily 3D, real time. I think there can be some value in that, but the way that I see the metaverse is what I would call embedded. I think the metaverse is going to be a digital and social infrastructure that is embedded in the way that we live and the way that we do things.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to bring up another slide here. Okay, I'm going to switch to this maturity model. Earlier this week, Dave Rhodes talked about a maturity model. And I think the sign that a technology or an industry is evolving when you start having maturity models. So I'm going to pull this up here. So this is a maturity model that Unity has come up with so that we can talk to our customers and help them on their journey and help them identify sort of where they're at today and where they'd like to go. So I'm going to throw this out there. Let's talk about maturity models. Are they important?
They are, because to be quite honest, it gives you something that you can talk about and at least disagree about the same things.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I'm a level 1. No, you're not. You're a level 2.
Well, I mentioned earlier the art of the possible. So if you look at level 5, an autonomous twin, right, whatever, like that's the art of the possible. And you could probably build one of those things today. But then you work with a company and you kind of go, you're not level 1 yet. You need work to do. Like people would say, oh, okay, we want to go to the metaverse. And I'm going, great, how's your IoT rollout going? Oh, we're just starting. And I'm like, oh, good. Come back to me in a couple of years. Right. So I do think that, but it's about, I think the technology, the use cases are maturing once we start putting together maturity models, because that means that someone started thinking about it. And if I may, you have the Digital Twin Consortium.
Yep.
You have various other companies. You go to an energy conference and you'll have Schneider and Siemens and whatever talking about their maturity models for digital twins, for say a power station. So maturity models are, to me, that we've moved away from the PowerPoint slides and people have actually started doing this stuff and figuring out what's hard and building a roadmap on how to get there. We've gone past the Kool-Aid.
Dan, comments?
Yeah, and I agree. And to echo Kevin's point on how you use the maturity model, I think it's a great tool to sit down with a customer and talk about strategy. In this space, there's a lot of shiny objects and new technologies that may or may not be the right fit for an organization, or the organization might not be mature enough to adopt it. But strategy is all about prioritization, and it can help you see where you're at and where you want to go and help you make those strategic decisions around prioritization.
The other aspect to the maturity model is, so there's maturity, where you are when you're thinking about developing digital twins, but there's also readiness. So how ready are you with the data that you have, the information, the understanding of your business model? So, and where can you provide value? So, just as an example, previous to working at Unity, I worked at a company that was in charge of a $3 billion development of the submarine, the Columbia-class submarine. So interestingly, they had a number of substantial digital twins that were built into their model-based systems engineering process. And you think, well, it's a Columbia-class submarine, it's got to be a level 5. But it's not that way at all. Like, in other words, you don't necessarily have to feel like I need to be at level 5. What's more important is, what is the problem it was trying to solve at that point? What did you really need to get out of creating digital twins as you're developing this next class of submarines? Sometimes it's just we have a new component, we need to fit it in and see how well it works. Other times it's we need it to be an autonomous system that is going to provide reinforcement and feedback in time critical and very important, sometimes dangerous areas. But that maturity model is helping us to see that. It's helping us to see that maturity and readiness is an important starting point as we develop these digital twins.
Okay, so if we go back to the Singapore example that we showed, where would you characterize that digital twin on this maturity model? Kevin?
And it's tree-ish.
Predictive twin.
Yeah, because they were talking. One of the key things that I keep saying to folks is that people go, oh, it's a nice animation. And I'm going, it's not an animation, it's a simulation.
Simulation, right.
And we'll get onto it later. It's about the physics engines and blah, blah, blah. But like you mentioned, okay, so they pulled in the CAD model, they did LiDAR, blah, blah. But they were talking about we can model the flow of people for an event.
Right.
And then maybe take some actions on that in terms of air conditioning and lighting and then whatever. So there's simulation going on. So to me, it's kind of a 3.
A 3, okay. Dan?
Yeah, so I would agree with 3 as well. And I think that the video showed phenomenal technology that's being used today. And I think some of the things that were implied, and maybe not as explicit, is the people and the processes that went into not just building the capability, but maintain it and how do they use it. And so I think that right at that point, there's always room to not necessarily improve, but ways that you can move to where you're trying to go. And I just didn't want to overlook the people and the processes aspect as well.
Right. I mean, when you look at it, it's a very impressive. I mean, this, from what I've seen today that's actually running, that is probably the best example of a digital twin. Paul?
So I see it as a 2. No matter how complex and visually accurate it is, what it wasn't doing was it wasn't combining multiple sources to provide actionable feedback. So it's a very good example of what we call sort of a high accuracy, descriptive based digital twin. And those are important. But what it doesn't do yet is it doesn't say, now we've got all these layers. We've got infrastructure, we've got traffic, we've got energy, we've got flight data. Now I need to be able to create something that provides some insight into how those different layers work together. I think it's a great example of it too, and it has all the ability to move into the 3s and 4s. But yeah, that's where I see it.
Did you all see what just happened there? We had a conversation about it, and we had something that we could refer back to use to discuss it, right? To pull out different, yeah, I think it can do this, it maybe can't do that. And I think that's the benefit of having a maturity model. There's not a right answer, right? There's not an answer. Now, everybody's going to say, no one wants to be a 1, right? No one wants to be a 1, right? And we're not a 1.
To your point is that at least you can have a conversation about something, right? It's framing it. Otherwise, we're all using these buzzwords, and you say digital twin, I have something else in my head about a digital twin, and then we're wondering why we're
talking past each other, right? Well, I know, you keep seeing these things that are posted, oh, we've got a digital twin of the city, and you can fly through the city. It's terrain data that's being streamed. That's not a digital twin. That's a model of a city that you're able to fly through. Now, when you start adding data to it, maybe it's a virtual twin. Maybe we can agree that a terrain model's a virtual twin, okay? No, I think that this is very helpful. Let me go back to the question. So we got 6 minutes left. What does VR, I know, time goes, right? What does VR and AR provide that's driving digital transformation? Paul?
Yeah, so I'll start. One of the things that I love about where VR and AR is going is we are creating a very embedded society. And I think that's the future. Right now, what we're looking at is we have headsets, we have larger displays, we have tablets, we have mobile devices. But imagine in the future, imagine even 2 to 3 years from now, what we're looking at are fully embedded systems to the world that we live in. It can be Google Glass. I've seen contact lenses that provide that information. It could be visual autonomous data that's coming into our augmented reality world. But in the future, I think that is really where the greatest success is going to be. We're just going to converge these exogenous technologies and move them together to make it so it's just part of our world. And that's where I think VR and AR is going to be super helpful.
Yeah.
So for the better part of the last decade, lots of buzzwords have abounded in the defense space and in the government space around digital transformation. And for me, really, what I've seen just in the last few years, and really because of COVID, I've seen a spike with government clients who previously were, typically averse to the new emerging technology, really start to understand it and almost like leapfrog ahead. And so when you think of all the different plays and ways to approach digital transformation for a large enterprise or organization, something that's tangible that a lot of folks are using outside of the workplace now or in place of the workplace, it seems like that's a great first start for a lot of folks.
So coming from the energy industry, augmented reality has kind of come into its own since COVID, because it was a way of getting knowledge into people's heads when you couldn't fly people around. So the ability to be able to train, and in the energy industry, like any other industry, to trying to get new talent. A lot of them are my age or older and retiring, so how do I train the new guys? So that has been a game changer. VR for training. How do I train a fireman to run around in a nuclear power plant without running around the nuclear power plant? They've been at this for 10 years. And there's more and more examples in that. How do I train someone for a wind turbine maintenance without sending them up a wind turbine? But to be quite honest, and I think Dan, you mentioned it as well, is that taking VR and AR and dropping it into an existing workflow is not as easy as you think. Because people will ask you, how do I manage the devices? How do I do cybersecurity? What do you mean you're putting the design of our latest power plant into someone else's cloud that I have no control over? But if you look outside the door, you're seeing companies now putting all that infrastructure and plumbing underneath. But VR and AR is enabling people to collaborate in ways we never dreamt of before.
Yeah, and I think VR and AR have taken the concept of digital twins and given us a new way to collaborate and access that data in a much, much more meaningful way. I mean, I think it's part of what's driving this adoption of digital twins. So we built a digital twin for Orlando, the Orlando Economic Partnership, and we publicized that. Now, that is a physical digital twin. It's got a 180-degree screen, it's projection, because it's about getting people together in a space. But guess what we did? We took that digital twin and put it into a VR application, and it's running at that booth, at the Orlando Meta Center booth. If you want to go see that afterwards, it's actually, you're there at the digital twin in the facility. Now think about that, right? We can take that massive digital twin experience, put it into a VR headset. It's not the whole thing, but it's a good sample of it, right? Okay, so 2.5 minutes left. Let's talk about the industrial Metaverse and Digital Twins Committee. What makes you excited about that? I mean, you guys are going to be the ones running it. So anything you want to say about it, or what gets you excited?
I'm excited about the people, right? So, I focus in the defense space, federal government space, and so I'm excited to serve as a platform to bring people together. In 86% of airmen in the Air Force between the ages of 18 and 34 identify themselves as gamers. And so I think the next generation, especially in DoD and in the federal government, the next generation is not going to join by seeing a poster of Uncle Sam. They're going to be in a chat thread joining the Creators League. So like my hat's off to the recent announcement between the U.S. Space Force, the Space Force Association, and Unity for creating the Creators League. I think being able to have those conversations outside of formal structures and get to network and meet with people is why I'm really excited.
Paul?
I really greatly desire to see what people are doing. A really fun part of my job is to make sure that Unity and the organization at large is really seeing what's out there, how people are using every technology, just not Unity technology, and what we can do to bring that to customers, how to make you successful, how to partner together so we can be successful together. And there are a variety of things that we just don't know yet. Just coming here to see some of the work that people are doing, for example, work in Azure and AWS and how they're integrating that into these types of systems, what people are doing outside of the federal sector, what people are doing in operations and maintenance, How is it being used for medical simulation? I mean, it's a huge, huge opportunity there. And what types of hardware systems, embedded or otherwise, that are being used? I would love to be able to take that to our collective teams and see what we can do to build and to grow successfully together as organizations. That's my...
Well said.
To me, it's about, you know, we're just starting out in this, right? And there's a lot of great work done, but we're still, and if you look at what we're trying to do, and especially around simulation, like many of the industrial companies out there today are saying, well, when we put it into a digital twin, I want to train my AI for the robot inside the digital twin. I don't want to try it in the real world anymore. So the ability, and to Paul's point, is that like the reason I come here is that I'm in my energy industry bubble. And then you see what happens in medicine or in defense or in whatever. You're like, oh God, I never thought of that. So if we, through the Industrial Metaverse Digital Twin Committee, can start getting people in to go, here's the art of the possible in the various different industries, in different parts of the world, because even energy is different, and what they're doing in Houston is very different to what they're doing in Abu Dhabi. But we can start sharing some of that, and also bringing in people going, we've done it, or we've done this bit of it, and that worked, and that didn't.
Okay.
Because then we can accelerate everybody's, you know, we have a habit of making the same mistakes in different countries all the time, right?
So can you share with the audience out there, what are the plans for the committee? When are you going to start? How frequent are you going to meet? And who can join?
I could start. So what we're going to start doing is, what we'd like to do is have one guest speaker, likely a month, but a big part of what we're trying to do is turn this into what is the value for you. So it's not just descriptive, hey, this is what's happening. What we'd really like to do is make sure when you come to our meetings, when you're part of the organization, you feel like this could be an opportunity for me to grow my business. This could be an opportunity to network. I'm getting something out of this that I feel like I can use towards my success. It might be partnering. It might be, you know, first time looking at technology that's emerging from major organizations. It could be leaders in the field that have the money and are saying, this is what we want to do. So that's the way that I see it. I know that we're all busy, and my feeling is if we can really make sure it's of value to you, that's going to be important.
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo Paul's points, and I'm super interested in feedback, and whether it's from the topics that we want to cover or the speakers that we want to bring to our meetings. Really, just want an engaged community. So looking forward to it.
All right. Well, gentlemen, we are out of time. Thank you all so much. Let's give them all a big round of applause. Yay! All right.
Bigger.
And a photo? You guys want a photo before they turn the lights off?
Yes, please.
Sarah will get one here.
Ah, here we go.
I don't know if the stage can handle all this beauty. What do you think?
There goes the camera.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
All right.
Thank you, gents.
Exit stage right.